The encrypted communique pulsed ominously on the ship's monitor, its stark message casting a shadow over the bridge. Captain Eliza Farrow stared at it, her face illuminated by the cold glow of the screen, as the moon hung low over the Pacific Ocean, a silent witness to the unfolding crisis. The terse message was chilling in its simplicity. You have one cycle to surrender your species. Resistance is futile. The Ulver Dominion, ***, the message pulsed ominously on the screen, a chilling harbinger of humanity's impending trial. The message pulsed ominously on the screen, its stark simplicity amplified by the weight of its source. The Ulver Dominion, infamous for their conquests and ruthless efficiency, rarely bothered with direct communication to those they sought to dominate. This was not a warning, it was a proclamation, delivered with the casual arrogance of a predator addressing its prey. A sharp chime from the tactical console broke the uneasy quiet, followed by the faint hum of the carrier vessel Resolute's engines, a sound that seemed louder with every passing second. It pressed on their ears like an unyielding reminder of the stakes, amplifying the tension that gripped the room. Officers exchanged nervous glances, some clutching the edges of the table as if bracing for an unseen blow. The air grew heavier, suffused with a mix of dread and defiance. Someone shifted in their seat, the faint creak echoing like a gunshot in the oppressive stillness. Outside, the distant whir of machinery seemed almost alive, a mechanical heartbeat reminding them all of the stakes. Around the conference table, her senior officers exchanged uneasy glances, their expressions wavering between disbelief and defiance. The Ulver were no strangers to humanity's fledgling ventures into interstellar diplomacy. They were infamous, a hegemonic empire that had crushed countless civilizations in their path, leaving behind little more than ashes and submission. One cycle? Lieutenant Jackson finally broke the silence, his voice laced with anger. That's what, 24 hours? 18, Eliza corrected, her tone flat yet measured. She glanced at the timer projected on the central display, a cruel countdown to humanity's proposed extinction. They mean for us to panic? And what exactly do they expect us to do? Roll over and beg? Growled Commander Patel, slamming his fist on the table. We're not some backwater species they can steamroll. We have resolve, Eliza interrupted, locking eyes with each of her officers. But resolve alone isn't enough. We need a plan. The ship's AI, Athena, chimed in, her synthetic voice calm yet tinged with urgency. Ulver vessels have entered the outer perimeter of the solar system. Based on their trajectory, they will reach Earth in approximately 14 hours. Their fleet comprises 37 capital ships and over 100 auxiliary craft. 37? Whispered Ensign Park, her face pale. We barely have 5 ships equipped for deep space combat. Eliza stood, her presence commanding. Let's not waste time stating the obvious. Athena, what do we know about their capabilities? The Ulver prioritize overwhelming firepower and psychological warfare, Athena replied. Their standard approach involves orbital bombardments followed by ground invasions. Their shielding technology is advanced, rendering most conventional human weaponry ineffective. So they're arrogant, Eliza muttered, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Good. Arrogance is a weakness. The officers exchanged puzzled looks. Patel leaned forward, his brow furrowed. You've got something in mind, Captain? Eliza's smile widened, though her eyes remained cold. Athena, pull up the schematics for our experimental defense grid. The grid combines high-yield railguns, stealth orbital mines, and an advanced EMP system designed to disrupt shielded vessels. Let's remind the Ulver what it means to underestimate humanity. Hours later, the bridge of the Resolute buzzed with controlled chaos. Technicians and officers worked side by side, coordinating the activation of Earth's rarely tested planetary defense systems. Massive railguns, orbital mines, and experimental EMP bursts were all prepped for deployment. Yet Eliza knew these measures alone wouldn't suffice. Captain, Athena's voice cut through the din, a priority message from Admiral Grayson on Earth. Patching him through. The holographic image of the Admiral materialized before her, his stern expression betraying the weight of their dire situation. Captain Farrow, are you certain about this strategy? If the Ulver retaliate, billions of lives are at stake. Eliza squared her shoulders. With respect, sir, doing nothing guarantees our annihilation. They expect us to cower. Let's show them humanity's strength lies in its unpredictability. Grayson's eyes narrowed, studying her. Then, with a curt nod, he said, You have full authorization. Godspeed, Captain. As the countdown dwindled, the Resolute ventured toward the edge of the solar system, carrying with it the faint hope of survival. Eliza's voice crackled over the intercom, steady and resolute. "Crew of the Resolute, this is your captain. You've trained for this moment. You know what's at stake. Remember, the Ulver see us as primitive, as lesser beings unworthy of resistance. Let's show them what humanity is capable of when pushed to the brink. Together we fight not just for survival but for the right to exist." Her words hung in the air, charged with determination, like a bowstring drawn taut. Around the ship, fists clenched and jaws tightened, each crew member a coiled spring of defiance waiting to be unleashed. The tension was palpable, a storm gathering within them, ready to strike back against the encroaching darkness. Fear was a given, but so was defiance. Humanity had been underestimated before, and time and again, they had proved their resilience. The first contact was not a message but an act of war. The lead Ulver dreadnought fired a warning shot, a concentrated energy beam that lanced through space and shattered one of Jupiter's moons. The obliterated fragments spiraled outward, glowing like molten shards before fading into the void, a silent testament to the destruction. The brief flash of annihilation rippled through the Resolute's crew, an ominous warning of the enemy's power. The remnants of the moon's debris scattered across space, shimmering like dying embers against the black void. On the Resolute, the crew stood transfixed, the sight etching fear and rage into their faces. Ensign Park whispered a shaken prayer under her breath, while Patel's knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of the console. The magnitude of the Ulver's power was undeniable, but so too was the growing resolve that burned in their eyes. "They want to scare us," Eliza muttered, her voice steady. "Let's show them what fear truly looks like." The display was meant to intimidate. Eliza's response was immediate. "Athena, execute Protocol Helios." The ship's experimental weapon systems roared to life, launching a barrage of projectiles aimed at the Ulver fleet. Each missile carried a payload designed to disrupt their advanced shielding. Within moments, the void of space erupted into a chaotic ballet of explosions and light. The Ulver's response was swift, their fleet maneuvering with unnerving precision. Yet, as their ships closed in, their overconfidence became apparent. They hadn't anticipated the extent of humanity's ingenuity. "Now," Eliza whispered, her gaze locked on the tactical display. From the dark side of the moon, a hidden array of orbital mines detonated in unison, unleashing a massive electromagnetic pulse. These mines, deployed with meticulous precision over months, showcased humanity's ingenuity and resolve to adapt against overwhelming odds. Placed in positions that maximized their impact, they had been designed not only to disrupt the Ulver's shielding but also to capitalize on their predictable formations, turning their arrogance into a liability. The Ulver ships faltered, their movements sluggish as their systems struggled to recalibrate. The bridge erupted in cheers, but Eliza raised a hand for silence. "This is only the beginning," she said grimly. "The real fight starts now." As the Ulver fleet regrouped, Eliza knew one thing with certainty: they would come back with everything they had. And humanity's survival would depend on whether they could endure the storm and deliver one of their own. The Ulver fleet began to reassemble, their ships weaving together like shards of obsidian drawn by an unseen hand, forming a tight phalanx. Their engines roared with a deep, guttural hum that reverberated through the void, a menacing rhythm that seemed to echo the inevitability of their advance. The glow of their engines flickered with predatory intent as their systems recovered from the electromagnetic pulse. On the Resolute, Captain Eliza Farrow studied the tactical display with laser focus. The initial volley had bought humanity precious time, but it was clear the Ulver were adapting quickly. Their movements grew sharper, more deliberate, as if the fleet itself were a living organism recalibrating to crush its prey. "They're regrouping faster than anticipated," Athena observed, her voice calm but tinged with urgency. "Probability of another direct assault reaching Earth within the next 8 hours is now at 87%. Then we need to hit them where it hurts before they get the chance," Eliza replied, her tone resolute. "What's the status on the Vanguard Initiative payload?" "Fully operational," Athena confirmed. "But deploying it will leave the Resolute vulnerable for approximately 4 minutes due to the power required to charge the secondary emitters." 4 minutes in a firefight is a lifetime," Patel muttered, crossing his arms. "What's the fallback if this doesn't work?" "There is no fallback," Eliza said sharply, turning to face her crew. "If we don't cripple their command structure now, Earth won't stand a chance. We execute the plan and trust in our preparations. Are we clear?" The bridge crew exchanged grim looks but nodded in unison. Patel let out a resigned sigh. "As clear as it gets, Captain." The Vanguard Initiative was a gamble, one that had been years in the making. Its core component was a prototype weapon designed to exploit a flaw in the Ulver's communication relays. Intelligence gathered from scattered encounters suggested that the Ulver's massive fleet relied on a centralized network to coordinate its movements. The Vanguard payload was humanity's desperate attempt to sever that network. Eliza stood at the helm, her hands clasped behind her back as she watched the countdown timer on the main display. Each second stretched thin, like fragile glass threatening to shatter under the unbearable weight of her decisions. "Athena," she said, breaking the tense silence, "how long until the Ulver detect the weapon's activation signature?" "Approximately 90 seconds from deployment," Athena replied. "Once activated, their primary sensors will register the energy spike immediately." Eliza's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we need to make those 90 seconds count." The Resolute surged forward, its engines blazing as it closed the distance to the Ulver fleet. Around the ship, the void of space crackled with the distant echoes of battle. Railgun slugs and plasma bursts streaked past the vessel, their brilliance carving searing trails through the void like vengeful comets. Each impact reverberated through the hull with a bone-rattling thrum, a stark reminder of the chaos surrounding them and the fragile barrier separating them from destruction. Each impact resonated through the hull, a visceral reminder of the razor-thin line between survival and annihilation. "Entering optimal range," Athena reported. "Payload deployment in 10 seconds. All hands brace for evasive maneuvers," Eliza commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. "Fire on my mark." The countdown ticked away, each number pounding in the ears of the bridge crew like the tolling of a funeral bell. At 0, the Resolute unleashed the Vanguard payload. A shimmering orb of energy shot forth, its surface pulsating with an otherworldly glow as it raced toward the Ulver fleet. The reaction was immediate. The Ulver's tight formation faltered as their ships broke ranks, colliding in their desperate attempts to evade the incoming threat. Engines flared erratically, leaving trails of molten exhaust as the once imposing phalanx dissolved into chaos. Alarms blared aboard their vessels, and flashes of energy flickered like panicked fireflies against the void. But it was too late. The orb detonated in a blinding flash, sending shockwaves rippling through space. For a brief moment, the Ulver fleet appeared to freeze, their movements disjointed and chaotic. "Direct hit," Athena confirmed, her tone tinged with triumph. "Ulver command network disrupted. Their fleet is operating at approximately 40% efficiency." Cheers erupted across the bridge, but Eliza's expression remained grim. Her eyes locked onto the tactical display, scanning for any signs of counteroffensive movements among the disarrayed Ulver fleet. In her mind, the cheers felt distant, drowned by the cold calculations of what needed to happen next. The holographic projection reflected on her face, highlighting the tension etched into her features. She felt the weight of every life aboard her ship, of every civilian on Earth depending on her decisions, pressing against her resolve like a storm battering a fragile shoreline. The weight of command bore heavily on her, each cheer a reminder of the lives still in peril and the sacrifices yet to come. She knew the battle was far from over. "Status report," she barked, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. "Ulver ships are attempting to re-establish command protocols," Athena said. "Their fleet will regain full functionality in approximately 5 minutes. Eliza's mind raced. 5 minutes was a slim window, but it might be enough to tip the scales. "Patel, get me firing solutions for their command vessels. Jackson, prepare the EMP launchers for a second strike." "We're not done yet." The crew sprang into action, their earlier cheers replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. Around them, the battle raged on, but for the first time, it felt as though humanity had a fighting chance. The tactical display on the Resolute cast shifting shadows across the bridge, its red and blue markers colliding in patterns as unpredictable as stormy seas, each movement reflecting the relentless struggle outside. The shifting patterns mirrored the chaos outside, each movement a vivid testament to the life and death decisions unfolding in real time. Captain Eliza Farrow's gaze remained locked on the projection, her mind racing through potential strategies. The Ulver fleet, though momentarily disoriented, was already showing signs of regrouping. Time was slipping through her fingers. "Patel, report." Eliza barked. "Command vessels targeted, Captain." "Firing solutions uploaded to the main batteries," Patel replied, his voice clipped and efficient. "EMP launchers ready on your mark." Eliza nodded sharply. "Jackson, maintain evasive maneuvers. Do not let us become a stationary target." "Athena, how long until their network stabilizes?" "Approximately 3 minutes," the AI responded. Their fleet's coherence is increasing by the second. 3 minutes might as well be 3 hours, Eliza muttered, mostly to herself. She straightened and addressed the crew. We have to press the advantage. Execute the firing sequence. The Resolute shuddered as its main batteries roared to life, the deafening sound vibrating through the hull like the crack of a world splitting apart. The bridge trembled under the force, and a faint metallic tang filled the air as the ship launched a barrage of projectiles toward the Ulver command vessels. Simultaneously, the EMP launchers discharged, their payload streaking across the void like spears of crackling energy. The Ulver ships, still struggling to regain full control, were caught off guard. Direct hits on 2 command ships, Athena reported, her tone steady. One vessel's systems are completely offline. The other is heavily damaged but still operational. Focus fire on the operational vessel, Eliza commanded. We can't afford to leave them any semblance of leadership. Across the battlefield, the Ulver's infamous discipline began to fray. Ships that once moved with clockwork precision now drifted erratically, some firing wildly at imagined threats flickering on their malfunctioning sensors, while others hesitated, caught in indecision as conflicting commands overwhelmed their systems. Communications between their vessels crackled with overlapping commands, a cacophony that betrayed their mounting confusion. The rigid formations that once embodied their strength dissolved into a chaotic scatter, as if the fleet itself were fracturing under the weight of its own disarray. With their command network disrupted, individual ships acted erratically, some retreating while others charged forward in reckless desperation. The once imposing phalanx was now a patchwork of isolated skirmishes, and humanity's forces seized the opportunity. In the chaos, a nearby Ulver frigate broke formation and veered dangerously close to the Resolute, its weapon systems flared to life, unleashing a barrage of plasma bolts that streaked toward the human vessel. Evasive maneuvers, Jackson shouted, his hands flying over the controls. The Resolute banked hard to port, the bolts grazing its shields and sending ripples of energy across the hull. Alarms blared and sparks erupted from a nearby console. Shields at 60%, Athena reported. Hull integrity stable, but another direct hit could breach the reactor housing or disable primary propulsion. If that happens, we'll be sitting ducks in the middle of the battlefield. Eliza gripped the edge of her console, her knuckles white. Jackson, bring us around. Patel, prepare a concentrated volley. Let's take that frigate out of the equation. The Resolute swung in a wide arc, its railguns aligning with the Ulver frigate. A deafening volley erupted, tearing through the alien ship's shields and puncturing its hull. The frigate shuddered violently before erupting in a fiery explosion that illuminated the darkness of space. Threat neutralized, Patel confirmed, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. Eliza allowed herself a brief moment to exhale, but the respite was short-lived. Athena's voice cut through the bridge's controlled chaos. Captain, detecting a surge in Ulver fleet communications. They are attempting to deploy a countermeasure. What kind of countermeasure? Eliza demanded, her eyes narrowing. Analysis suggests a coordinated assault utilizing their remaining command vessels to focus fire on the Resolute, Athena replied. Their intention appears to be neutralizing the perceived source of their disarray. Eliza's mind raced. The Resolute was the linchpin of humanity's resistance in this battle. If it fell, the fragile cohesion of Earth's forces would crumble. But she also knew the Ulver's arrogance could be their downfall. Patel, how many EMP payloads do we have left? 3, Captain. Eliza's lips curved into a grim smile. Prepare to deploy all 3. Target the remaining command vessels. If they want to focus their fire on us, let's make it their biggest mistake yet. Her pulse quickened, but she forced her hands to remain steady on the console. There was no room for hesitation, only calculated defiance. For a fleeting moment, she thought of Earth below, of everything they were fighting to protect, and resolved that failure was not an option. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, their fear tempered by the weight of their resolve. Around them, the battle raged on, but the Resolute remained a beacon of defiance, its crew determined to tip the scales in humanity's favor. The countdown to deployment seemed to stretch endlessly, each second marked by the Resolute's precise yet perilous movements through the chaos, its every motion a calculated dance of survival. Eliza stood at the center of the bridge, her voice cutting through the din with unwavering authority. Hold steady. On my mark. At 0, the Resolute unleashed its remaining EMP payloads. The devices raced toward their targets, their arcs of energy crackling against the void. The Ulver's command vessels scrambled to evade, but the EMPs detonated in unison, enveloping them in waves of disruptive energy. Targets neutralized, Athena confirmed. The Ulver fleet's command network is effectively destroyed. A ripple of disbelief and elation spread across the bridge. For the first time, it seemed as though victory was within reach. Eliza allowed herself a faint smile but quickly steeled her expression. The battle was not yet over, and the cost of failure remained unimaginable. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Tell them to press the attack. Humanity fights together, and we finish this." The bridge of the Resolute erupted with activity as Eliza's command rippled through the fleet. Across the comm channels, captains from humanity's scattered forces acknowledged the signal with unified resolve. The battered remnants of Earth's defenses surged forward, their engines roaring with defiance and hulls scarred yet gleaming under bursts of plasma fire. The sharp hiss of exhaust and the pulse of distant explosions underscored their relentless advance, a cacophony that mirrored their unyielding determination. Formations tightened with precision, the ships carving a determined path through the chaos as they pushed into the heart of the disoriented Ulver fleet, their weapons blazing with relentless resolve. "Status update, Athena," Eliza ordered, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "The Ulver fleet is operating at 25% efficiency," Athena reported. "Their command network remains offline, and individual vessels are exhibiting increased disarray. However, some pockets of resistance are consolidating near their flagship." Eliza's eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. The Ulver flagship loomed amidst the chaos, its colossal form a jagged fortress of alien ingenuity, exuding an aura of relentless defiance that seemed to twist the very fabric of space around it. Its presence was a stark reminder of the stakes, a monument to the destruction it had wrought and the peril that still lingered. Even crippled, it radiated power and defiance. "They'll use the flagship as a rallying point," Eliza muttered. "We take it out and the rest will crumble." "Captain, focusing fire on the flagship will leave us vulnerable to counterattacks," Patel cautioned. Eliza nodded, the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. "We don't need to destroy it, just disable it." Patel Jackson, coordinate with the fleet. "I want concentrated fire on their propulsion systems and weapon arrays." Athena, prep the Resolute's secondary batteries for a precision strike. As the fleet adjusted its strategy, the Resolute moved into position, flanked by two remaining human dreadnoughts. The flagship, sensing the shift in momentum, unleashed a torrent of firepower. Plasma bolts and energy beams lanced through space, forcing the fleet into evasive maneuvers. "Shields at 40%. Athena announced as the Resolute absorbed a glancing blow. The impact rocked the ship, and Eliza braced herself against the console. "Hold steady," she commanded. "Focus all firepower on the flagship's engines. If we can immobilize it, the rest of their fleet will be vulnerable." The coordinated assault began. Railgun slugs, missile barrages and energy pulses converged on the Ulver flagship, tearing into its defenses. Explosions rippled across its hull, but the behemoth endured, its shields flickering but holding. "They're redirecting power to their forward shields," Athena reported. "Analyzing weak points, identified. Their aft reactor core is exposed, but we'll need to maneuver behind them to exploit it." "Jackson, take us around," Eliza ordered without hesitation. "Patel, signal the fleet to cover us. This is our best chance." The Resolute darted through the battlefield with a predator's agility, its engines flaring as it veered past shards of smoldering hull and streaks of hostile fire. The ship's frame groaned with the strain of each sharp maneuver, while alarms blared in a discordant symphony that underscored the razor-thin line between survival and destruction. Each maneuver seemed impossibly precise, the ship dancing through chaos while explosions and energy beams illuminated the void around it. Behind them, smaller ships engaged the Ulver fleet, buying precious time for the flagship's defenses to be breached. As the Resolute approached the exposed reactor core, the Ulver flagship unleashed a desperate salvo. A direct hit rattled the ship, sending crew members sprawling. "Shields at 10%, Athena warned. "Hull integrity is critical. Another hit will compromise internal systems." Eliza steadied herself, her gaze unyielding. "Athena, charge all remaining energy into the secondary batteries. Target the reactor core. We're finishing this." "Captain, if this doesn't work," Patel began, but Eliza cut him off. "It will work," she said, her voice like steel. "Fire." The Resolute's secondary batteries discharged in unison, sending a concentrated beam of energy straight into the reactor core. For a moment there was silence, a pause as if the universe itself held its breath. Then the flagship erupted in a blinding explosion, a searing flash of light that painted the void in shades of fire and ash. The force rippled outward, shaking nearby vessels and scattering debris like shattered stars, a visceral punctuation to the battle's climax. Cheers erupted across the Resolute's bridge, but Eliza raised a hand, silencing them. "We're not done yet." "Athena, status?" "The Ulver fleet is retreating," Athena confirmed. "Remaining vessels are abandoning the sector. Their flagship's destruction has broken their cohesion." Eliza exhaled, a wave of relief washing over her. But even in victory her expression remained guarded. "Signal the fleet. Begin search and rescue operations. Prioritize our wounded and stranded." Hours later the battlefield was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of salvaged ships and medical shuttles. Eliza stood on the bridge, gazing out at the debris-strewn void. Earth's forces had won, but the cost was staggering. Thousands of lives lost, ships reduced to wreckage. Yet humanity had endured. Patel approached, his tone softer than usual. "Captain, the fleet's leaders are requesting a conference. They want to discuss next steps." Eliza nodded, her mind already turning to the future. "Tell them I'll join shortly. First, I need a moment." Patel hesitated, then saluted and stepped away, leaving Eliza alone. For the first time since the battle began, Eliza allowed herself to feel the weight of it all. The lives lost, the sacrifices made, and the razor-thin margin by which they had survived. It pressed against her chest like a tidal wave held at bay, a somber reminder of what victory truly cost. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. The stars beyond the viewport seemed brighter now, their light cutting through the lingering shadows of battle, as if celebrating a hard-won triumph. To Eliza they reflected the countless lives entwined in this struggle, the lost, the survivors, and the future yet to be built. Each spark was a reminder of the unyielding spirit that had carried humanity through the darkest hour. To Eliza they weren't just stars, they were the countless souls who had fought and fallen, their resilience immortalized in the vast expanse. Each spark seemed to whisper a silent promise: humanity would endure. "We're still here," she whispered. And for the first time in days, a genuine smile crossed her face.